They say a week is a long time in football, and it turns out that even 6 days is enough for John McGlynn to reinvent his Falkirk side. The Bairns took everyone by surprise on Saturday as they harked back to McGlynn's first Rovers era, swapping out their slick passing and dynamic movement for a direct approach that Barry Robson's Rovers struggled with from the outset. Sent out to press a side that was effectively unpressable, the Rovers couldn't get to grips with the game and found themselves a goal down after 6 minutes when Liam Henderson headed in Brad Spencer's free kick at the back post. Chances were hard to come by for both sides, although in truth Falkirk always looked the more likely and did eventually get their second at the hour mark, thanks in large part to some hapless Rovers defending. In case you hadn't already guessed, this isn't going to be one of those fun episodes of the Oh No 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 podcast. But regardless, my name is Duncan Cameron, and drawing the shortest straws alongside me tonight, we've got Robbie Weir. First of all, how are you, Robbie?
Yeah, it wasn't very fun, that, albeit I did say before the cup game, if we had to pick one of the two, that I would go for the cup game over the league. So, yeah, still not going to agree about that. We still got through and settled in the next round, so clutching our straws here.
Yeah, to be fair, I think it was only me and you on that episode who said that, and that may explain the absence of everybody else. We've also got Carol Allison Smith as well. How are you, Carol?
I'm good. I'm hoping this is going to be the highlight of Monday. Thinking positive. Possibly not, though, after Saturday's game. It was not a fun time. No.
Yeah, we're going to suggest you'd have had a pretty terrible Monday up till now, but hopefully not.
No.
And rounding us off for tonight, we've also got Iain Latto as well. How are you, Iain?
Yeah, I'm here, and we're about to record a podcast which will go out.
These things are true. Do not interrogate them any further. Right, the good news is we have got 2 games to cover tonight, which gives us an excuse to not spend that much time talking about Saturday's defeat. But we will wade through it for a wee while anyway. Kind of flipping things on their head a little bit tonight, because I want to start with the manager's interview, actually. Just as a bit of a kind of jumping off point to talk about the game as a whole, and then we'll go back through some of the key incidents. Iain, the first thing that I picked out of that was Barry Robson said a couple of times. First time he said there was nothing in the game, and then the second time he said there was practically nothing in the game. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think Falkirk were worth their win. McGlynn got the tactics spot on, much to the surprise of everybody on the podcast, including myself, and quite crucially Barry Robson and his coaching team. We kind of saw a bit of what I'd like to call McGlynn Mark III. And I suppose if there are 3 ways to do things, one being the right way, one being the wrong way, and the other being the McGlynn Mark III way, it's just the right way but faster. And that's kind of what we saw. Like, they gave us, we've obviously set up to do broadly the same as what we did on Sunday in the Cup, and they've just not given us a chance. They've not dwelled on the ball in the back line in the way that they did in the Cup game. They've not allowed Marsh and Pollock to get at them and to unsettle them. They've just gone route one to McIver, or McKeever, however you like to say it, and they've put us under pressure, and it's totally done us. And when I was thinking about it after the game, my immediate reaction to it was like, I'm quite annoyed that we've been beaten by such a basic tactic. But the more I kind of thought about it and it kind of settled on it, there's not a lot you can do. If Falkirk are going to go long and they're going to put you under pressure, and you're not going to win those kind of first challenges, and you're not going to win your second balls, they've got that 3 across the kind of attacking midfield of Ethan Ross, Aguiman and Calvin Miller. And they're so quick. They're so quick onto the second ball. And there's really not a lot you can do against it. Fair play to John McGlynn. He absolutely flummoxed us. And it worked. Fair enough. There's really not much more you can say than that.
Yeah, that was the thing. Robson does say this in his interview as well. Every time he mentions Falkirk, because he keeps using the phrase route one, and every time he says it, he goes, but it's fair enough. And I think that is sort of the key point for me. I don't think playing direct football is any worse than playing passing football. I've always felt like that. And as you say, the best way to win a football game is the right way to win a football game. Or, the ends justify the means. If you win 2-0, you played the right style for that game. And that's the thing, is it was a complete tactical victory. Because that was exactly the Rovers set out to do, was to go do what they did on Sunday, to go and press. And they just didn't. Oh, sorry, no, they didn't. They couldn't. There was nothing to press. By Robson, a lot of managers do, they talk about sort of triggers for pressing. I'm absolutely certain every time Aidan Marsh or Finlay Pollock hit one of their triggers, they went, right, I'm going to go, oh no, hang on, the ball's away. Like, it's already gone. There's no point. There was twice, I think, in the first half, where Pollock went and pressed the goalkeeper. And it felt to me at the time like, this is what I've been told to do, so I'm going to show that I am doing it. Like, I am following the instructions. They're just not quite working right now. Because, if you've got 30 yards to chase down the goalkeeper and you catch him, then, fair play. But it never looked particularly likely to me. And I don't think there's no part of me that looks at a game like that and goes, or you've only won it by playing long ball or anything like that. Like, 'cause I don't even think they were, like, Route 1, I don't think quite sums it up. It was direct, but a lot of it was running. And just a very, very interesting, like, it's so, like, it's such a big change, is what I'm trying to say. And actually, I think that was the thing. Iain, you and I were both on the same page in the pre-match. It was like, look, McGlynn can only change so much. He's going to have to play the same way that they always play, because that's how they always play. It'll be an adaptation of that. And the thing wasn't so much that they played so differently. It was that they played so differently so well. Like, if you were on your holidays in Scotland, you turned up and you watched that game, there's not a chance you'd watch Falkirk and think, this is the first time they've tried to play like that. Because they were very, very good at it. So either they had an incredible week in training, or they've actually been drilling that for a while with it and kind of had it in the back pocket. And either way, it speaks very well to John McGlynn as a manager, really.
It makes me all the more certain that Falkirk will definitely win the league now. I think there's always been that little nagging doubt in the back of, certainly my mind and most people who I've spoken to, about, like, McGlynn, will he just try and keep play that way all through the winter, and will it eventually become unstuck? And I think how purposefully they pulled off that tactic and how well it went. And it wasn't, as you say, it's not like work the ball to the fullback who kicks it 60 yards and then they hope they win the header, and then it's like an actual tactic that they've worked on. Like when the ball goes into a certain position, certain players do certain things. It was totally worked on, and it worked really well. So it's made me pretty confident that they'll go on and win it, as much as it pains me to say it.
Yeah, and I think there's been a bit of snash thrown in the general direction of the Rover support for sort of suggesting that John McGlynn doesn't have a plan B. And my kind of counter argument would be, like, he never used to. But John McGlynn evolves as a manager. Like, we've seen that between his first spell at Rovers and his second spell. And I think that's just what you're seeing, is that when he was with us the last time, a couple of seasons, he did come unstuck in the second half. But he's worked on it. And I think that's probably why, he's got this ability to do that. He's learned from it previously. Because there's no doubting that in previous seasons, his second half of the season was worse than his first. But absolutely, that's the thing. I should have looked this up and I didn't. I don't know who they play on Saturday, but that manager, whoever it is, right now, doesn't have a clue how Falkirk are going to play. Are they going to revert back to doing what they've done every other game, or are they going to go, well, we've done that, let's stick to it?
It's what good teams do. It's absolutely what good teams do. They've got multiple tactics that they can pull off at any time. Power to them.
That's it. Very, very... and sorry, to go back to the question. like Barry Robson saying that there wasn't much in the game, or there was nothing in the game. On kind of balance of chances, he's not miles wide of the mark. When you watch the highlights, there's a couple of Falkirk chances where they should probably do a little bit better. There's a couple of Rovers chances that aren't a million miles away. There's one cleared off the line, the Rovers hit the bar. So in that sense, it wasn't a million miles between the teams, but there's two very big factors. One is that Falkirk are winning from the 6th minute onwards, so they don't have that same impetus. And then the other is just that it felt to me like Falkirk also had other places they could go. And I sort of hoped that the Rovers might do that, but over the course of the 90, they just didn't really. Carol, give me your thoughts on just generally that game and anything you want to pick out from the interviews afterwards as well.
I think I can pick up from the interview was just shock. I mean, Barry Robson the previous week had talked about he'd done his homework, he'd seen Falkirk play loads of times, he was prepped for this. And I think it was just shocking. I hadn't seen any inkling of this at all in the build-up. No possibility. And they just came out, and I think the tactic was don't let them play. I don't know if there was a plan B or this was a new style of McGlynn, but I think it was just come out and stop them playing. Because that's what you could see with our players, that they'd be going, right, I need to get from A to B, and Falkirk player would appear and they're like, well, where do I go? I don't have the ball, but I need to get to B. And they didn't seem to know what to do. Well, if you don't have the ball, you need to do this. They just seem to have route one fixed in it.
It's very much a case of like, right, we're going to be turning the ball over in their half, and that's how we're going to create chances. And then we didn't have that option. It's like, right, well, the bloody hell do we do now?
Yeah, just keep running at them. But then we couldn't, because our big thing is speed. We're very quick. Like trigger's the best word, is that we're quite slow and then it just go. And they wouldn't, anytime we tried to get out those traps, they just stomped on us. But not physically, just slowed the play down or just batted it away. And we didn't know what to do.
Yeah. I thought actually that's one thing. We're already all over the place, but like second half, again, just very, to your point, Iain, about kind of being more confident that Falkirk going on win the league. Like, just controlled that game really well. It just never felt like the Rovers were going to get a goal back, basically, once it went to 2-0. And that, I think, is actually, it's a great compliment, because you know yourself watching Rovers sides, like, you talk about 2-0 being a dangerous lead, and it feels like that watching us. It never felt like that watching them on Saturday. So, Robbie, the game has barely started, really, and the Rovers are a goal down. Not for the first time this season. It's one of our less helpful habits, conceding early doors. This one combines conceding early with another of our favourites, which is crosses, and yet another of our favourites, which is slightly sketchy marking at set pieces. Give me your thoughts on any and all of that, please.
Yeah, from the initial get-go, sort of the foul from Scott Brown was one that sort of drew a bit of questioning from sort of the home support, I think, with the angle that probably you saw it in the south stand and the main stand. Again, looking back with hindsight on the Rave TV replay, I mean, you look at it and you can see the referee's vantage point and probably think, yeah, you can understand why he's given it. But then after that, yeah, it was just a ball in from Brad Spencer, and it really evades everyone in the central spot. Like, nobody, whether it's a Rave player or a Falkirk player, covers themselves in any glory. You see Liam Dick going for it, but it's just the ball just sails past them. And then I think really what happens is you've got Scott Brown, and I think Scott Brown's is of the mindset of, okay, I can see this ball out, I can just let it bounce past me. But unfortunately, there's the giant, it's almost like the meme I don't know who the other wrestler is, but like the Undertaker's lurking behind him in the background. Or the meme with Jason Momoa and Henry Cavill on the red carpet where he's like sneaking up on him. It's like that, but Ewan Henderson's just perfectly behind like Scott Brown. And you've got to give credit to Henderson because he comes in so quickly and he just absolutely bodies him out the way. Not in a sense that it's going to be a free kick for Rovers, but he's absolutely opportunistic. And just again, I've seen a bit of questioning about Kev for the goal. People saying, should he come out for it? And I don't know, very long way from home for Kev to be going for that one. I don't know what everyone else is thinking. But
not for me.
Yeah.
It's a busy 6-yard box as well, isn't it? There's a lot of players there, and I'm not sure you can lay that one at Kev's door, personally.
To be honest, I've seen quite a lot of criticism of Kevin. We can talk about this in a wee bit. But just overall, just a really poor goal to concede. Giving that away so quickly into the game causes an uphill battle. Now, obviously, we came from behind to win last week against the same side, so you're reasonably optimistic. But at the same time, it's frustrating when you see Robson call it out as like he can automatically recognise it, and he's just like, we really need to just stop doing this because it's self-sabotage, really. There's no other way of putting it. The fact that we've done this time and time and time again over the season, that has in itself just become, it's not even like a hard to analyse point that you would need to put through a statistics website or get any major thought into, because your average person, your average Rovers fan can tell you this sort of stuff.
It's funny, I watched his interview, then I watched the highlights tonight in preparation for this. It was a good laugh.
Sadist.
And when he said, like, we need to stop making mistakes, I kind of raised an eyebrow because it's a bit like saying we need to start kicking the ball into the goal. Like of course we need to stop making mistakes. There's nobody out there trying to make mistakes. But then as I watched the highlights, I was like, I have made quite a lot of mistakes actually. Because there's plenty of Falkirk chances that don't lead to goals where just like stupid mistake. Again, like by the player's own standards, like how are you doing that? Like there's Ewan Murray, more on him later, at one point just lets himself be closed down and then basically passes the ball straight to, I think it's Calvin Miller. It's just nowhere near Doherty. There's one in the second half where Ross Matthews goes and collects the ball, like second ball from a corner, and then just turns back into trouble and takes a terrible touch at the same time. You think, wait, you've made two, you've made the wrong decision and then the wrong action. And it's like Lewis Stevenson was another one who just seemed to be like the ability to play 10-yard passes seemed to just elude him at times.
There was one as well in the first half where the ball was getting played about the centre-backs and Falkirk are gradually closing us down. But instead of playing the ball from centre-back to centre-back, we played it back to Kev, who's then struggling to get out his feet because it gets caught right under him. And then people are getting on Kev's back like, why are you shite at kicking? And it's like, well, it would help if you didn't play the ball to him in a position that makes him really, really vulnerable. Like...
So this is an interesting point, and I think it ties into something I was going to say about that free kick and about Kev coming for it. I don't think he should, first of all. And I actually think it's borderline for, like, would any goalkeeper be coming for that? And part of it is actually, and again, it touched on something you said, I actually think it's overhit. Like, I don't think Brad Spencer's swinging that into the back post. I think he's trying to put it in the middle and he puts too much on it. And as you say, all credit to Henderson for getting a goal out of it. But I don't think most goalkeepers come for that. I think you'd have to be one of these guys who comes flying off his line all the time to actually really kind of consider it. But the other thing is, if he comes flying off his line at that point, and it's Kevin Dabrowski, it's out of character, and it would be even worse. Like this, we talked about this last week, at the end of the game, where he caught a couple of balls really easily on the goal line because he hadn't come out for it. My biggest issue at this point now is almost a failure to adapt to how he plays the game, because he's not going to change now. And you've got two choices. Like, you can either, as a defence, adapt to it, or you can pretend he can do stuff that he can't. and then get annoyed when he can't do it. And I found this, you see it a lot. I found it funnily enough, actually, it was Robbie Thompson previously, when Davo and Benny were the centre halves. And it was like every week they would try and shepherd stuff back to him, and every week he wouldn't come out to get it, and then they'd have a big argument. And like at a certain point, as a defender, you just need to accept he's not going to come for this. And it's the same with these set pieces. Right. Dabrowski's not going to come flying out for this. Neither did Dave McGurn, by the way. Never came out for anything. And it was fine, because Mark Campbell just was like, right, sound, I'm just going to head at everything. And it's the same with these pass backs as well. Like, you can't give him these slightly ropey back passes and then be surprised when it's followed up by a slightly ropey kick. Like, there's no surprises here. There's no secrets. He can't kick the ball very well as far as these things go. But, it's like judging a fish and its ability to climb a tree. Like, he can't kick the ball very well. Why are you keeping on asking him to kick it?
Yeah, that's not a new thing. Do you know what I mean? There's a meme where the guy's cycling along with a bike, and then he sticks the stick in his own front wheel and then falls off, and it's like, oh, what the fuck? It's very much that. It's like, we know this player has deficiencies in his game. Stop doing it. Like, stop giving him the ball in a situation where he doesn't want to deal with it. Like, okay, it's not the greatest that his kicking isn't the best, and okay, it's not the greatest that he's not going to come and claim crosses, but we're 2 years in now. Like, this isn't news.
That's exactly. It's the same as like constantly playing long balls to a totty wee forward. Like, sometimes you're going to want to play a long ball, but if you can't win it, there's no point. You've got to adapt and try and find other ways. So that's been brewing for a while, and I recognise that generally I'm very kind of pro Dabrowski. I think I might be on the other side of the coin for the second goal. By the way, I've seen some people being quite kind in their interpretation, which I do not agree with, but we will come to that. The other point I just want to make on this goal, and it's kind of by the by, given how it comes through, but as you say, Robbie, it's Henderson and Browner at the back post. I think Henderson deserves all the credit because he basically gambles. He basically goes, his cross is overhit. Maybe I can sneak into the back post. And I think Scott Brown's biggest sin is that he doesn't take the same gamble. I think he goes 9 times out of 10 that's going to go out, and just doesn't then go and make sure almost. And it probably 9 times out of 10 Henderson or the player in his position doesn't make the same run, and you get away with it. I don't love the way we're set up to defend that free kick anyway. If you sort of freeze the highlights as the ball's coming over, Liam Dick and Paul Hanlon are on one another's toes, and neither of them has a man. So the two of them and Lewis Stevenson are all in the same area. Stevenson is sort of nominally marking Tom Lang. Now that, in and of itself, doesn't seem great. But I don't, and I recognise that there's theory to defending set pieces that I don't understand. But from a layman's point of view, I don't understand the benefit of Dick and Hanlon being so close there. And when you look at the Falkirk side and you go, right, Henderson's decent in the air, Donaldson's decent in the air, Lang's decent in the air, McIver's decent in the air. And then you look at the Rovers team and you go, right, well, we've got a back three as well, but neither of our wingbacks are particularly big. We don't have a big striker either. We're already kind of at a deficit. And then 2 of our centre-halves are standing in the same spot. I don't really get it. I'd love for someone to kind of explain to me the theory of this sort of hybrid. It's a bit zonal, it's a bit man, and why you put people where. Because it doesn't look great to me. It doesn't seem like you're getting the best.
It's kind of like how, I know that obviously places like Twitter are now dominated by populism with the most simplistic arguments, and nobody looks at the most nuanced side of things, do they? I think for an oaf like me to be sitting there, you'd be like, we take our big man and go against your big man. Like, Hanlon, you get on McIver, and then like just work your way down through like 6'2" all the way right through down until you're left with, I don't know, Aidan Marsh kicking about somewhere. It's just, I think it's a very easy thing to sort of see.
That's exactly it.
Like, from a, as you say, from a layman's perspective. And then there's probably a lot more theory that goes into it. But yeah, I think it's a natural frustration to have to. So I think when we saw the signings that we made in the summer, you see Fordyce coming in, and particularly Paul Hanlon, you think, right, that's surely going to fix the problem. But then we're continually, like, we're in January now, and we're continue to be hitting the same issues. It's very heat knocking against the wall, particularly given, like, we had Scott Brown at centre back last year. So we've addressed the problem as such, but the problem's still not solved.
Yeah. Carol, anything you want to add on the goal and the opening kind of onslaught?
Can we just stop doing it? It's just, it's bit...
You're in the Barry Robson school. Just stop making mistakes.
Just stop doing it. Really, just no. Not just for the goal, but you can see that the heads go down, and we haven't. And we've been doing this for over a year. We haven't mastered that when we go one goal down 6 minutes in, instead of going right, let's get at it. We go, oh, we're a goal down, and it's 6 minutes in. Well, what are we going to do? Well, just the same as we've got planned. No, get your arses in gear and rocket up your arse and do something.
Yeah, we got a bad habit of conceding twice in quick succession, and obviously we didn't do that, but we probably should have done.
Yeah.
Probably the best example of the sort of Route 1 nature of Falkirk. And it's actually, I bet John McGlynn's fizzing that Ethan Ross didn't put this in the goal, because it would have been a perfect little clip to be like, look at what we did on Saturday. So the ball gets knocked back to the goalkeeper, whereas last Sunday, he would have put his foot in the ball, Finlay Pollock would have been on him, and he'd have passed it out. Instead, he just puts his foot through it. Brad Spencer, of all people, flicks it on with a head. Alfie Aguiman just sort of swings his boot to turn it round the corner. It goes over the head of Paul Hanlon, and Ethan Ross is clean through on goal. And he really should score. I'm sure he'll be disappointed in himself that he puts it kind of centrally and high, which seems like two wrong choices when he's got pretty much the whole of the rest of the goal to aim at.
I think if we did that, we would have gone down 4 or 5-0, because our heads would have just gone between our knees. We'd have been useless.
Yeah, certainly the South Stand wouldn't have been a fun place to be. And that was kind of the pattern of the rest of the first half. Falkirk, a lot of like direct running, more than sort of your when you think of Route 1 football, or certainly when I think of Route 1 football, I kind of think about strikers winning headers on the edge of the box, but they were actually playing a fair bit deeper than that, but then running at us. And it was Aguiman, Ross, even Calvin Miller basically playing from left wing back, running at us as often as not. There were some Rovers chances sort of interspersed throughout that first half. Again, we weren't out of the game, I think, really at any point until the second goal. Paul Hanlon has a lob kind of cleared off the line. I think it's Liam Henderson again, to be fair to him. And Dylan Easton hits the bar with a free kick. But I think the point I want to make around this is pretty much all of those chances, with maybe one exception, come from set pieces. Robbie, to what extent, given we've just spent 10 minutes there bitching about the defence, where's our biggest problem, do you think? Is it defending or is it attacking?
Duncan, go and just ask me like an easier question, like how do you solve the war in Ukraine? Like, Jesus.
Jeez,
That's a loaded question if there ever was one. I mean, it's a culmination of multiple problems. I don't think you can really say one's more taking precedence the other. Again, naturally we.
Well, do you want me to refine that question?
Yes, it might help.
How big a problem is our inability to score goals from open play? Okay, that's a lot easier
to answer. Huge. It's a huge problem. I think that, they're just... I feel like at times that we can be far too protective with possession. Like, a lot of the time we'll get the ball down the wing, and particularly if we are playing with wing backs, and then we just play it back, and then eventually it ends up at the centre backs. Like, sometimes, there was one in particular that I remember with Liam Dick, where I was just thinking, come on, just take a swing at it and just get in the box, and then someone can gamble on it. Because we saw Hogarth, and again, solid performance from him. He didn't have too much to do, but there was that moment where he dropped a ball, and that's where the handling lob came from. Now, again, might be that the referee gives a free kick, but you've still got to ask the question, whereas you're never going to do that if the ball goes backwards. And again, it's very simplistic terms to look at. But then also as well, by that, then you've got to also ask questions in terms of like what's going on with the midfield. Like, we're putting players into positions where we really need for them to be stepping up and collecting the ball. But then as well, how often do we shell it long? In particular against, because it did feel like we ended up playing a sort of percentages game with Aidan Marsh against the likes of Cole Donaldson and Tom Lang. And it's always going to be a tough ask for him. He's 5'9". Like, you're asking a lad. And I know that you guys waxed lyrical about Aidan Marsh last weekend after the sort of Falkirk game. But I think that, like, it was one game in isolation. We've still got a long way to go to see what he's like. And I think people very quick to sort of be like, it's an upgrade on Lewis Jameson. But I think we're going to have to wait and see with this one. I'm fully behind the lad, like his enthusiasm, but yeah, I'm just a bit. I think for me as well, just going forward, I think that like this was a problem that really should have been fixed last summer. And I know it's easy to say because Callum Smith has an unforeseen injury. He's a reliable player at the championship level. Jack Hamilton, nobody could have foreseen sort of the injury issues that he's had. And a word for Jack Hamilton, it must be brutal for him now. Psychologically, it must be such a nightmare because you've got so many people questioning you and sort of asking about that and sort of saying what's going on. At the moment, that doesn't feel like it's worked out. But yeah, I was saying earlier on, it feels like we had 4 weeks to prepare in the summer, whereas every other championship team was done their business because they finished outside of the playoffs. Other than Partick, who have Brian Graham, every other team sort of go out and sign George Oakley. Ollie Shaw goes to Morton. And we've persisted with the same front line, and then we go back for Jamie Gullen, who's, well, due respect, Hammer, really lovely guy from all accounts. But we're kind of going back to the same well again. 5th time he's re-signed, and it's a bit like, okay, we really need him to be sticking centrally because we can't be having this sort of going out wide. And to be fair to him, when he came on in the second half, he did stay on the penalty spot and he created more chances in the time that he was on. But I think it's just a bit... If you were looking to point the finger at one area that we needed to do better at in the summer, I think it is in terms of the centre forward. I think that's a fair comment to say.
I think we've got, especially on Saturday, it was really obvious. Like, if our main tactic is to win the ball high up the park, and the opposition don't give you the opportunity to do that, you then need to build something from deep. And if you're playing a 3-5-2, that comes from your width, which is from your fullbacks. Jordan Docherty, I really like, but he's not a fullback. He's not a wing back. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to be getting bursting down the outside. And to be fair, he did it a couple of times, but he's not that type of player. I think he's a technical type player that's got a good engine, but I don't see him as a marauding wing back. And then on the other side, you've got Lewis Stevenson, who is advancing in years. So I don't think it's much of a stretch to see that we're really struggling to create chances, because when you need to build from there, you've got two players who maybe aren't the best suited to actually create your chances. I'm sure we'll get on to it, but I think we might. I don't know about Tuesday. I think we might keep the same shape, and I think we might have a couple of changes. We'll get to it.
Yeah, so someone on Pie and Bovril, and I'm sorry I didn't note down the username. I would have given them a shout. Did the numbers for this earlier. So we're 20 games into the league season, and we've scored 11 goals from open play.
If that helps, which, again...
Sean said 9, and it was corrected by someone else. So at least it's not 9, but yeah, I think possibly even 8. Anyway, it's 11. Looked right when I saw it, which like nearly or just over a goal every other game from open play. And again, I had the numbers. I've got them somewhere in this notepad on my desk. It was whatever it was, 2 shots on target for every away game. Like, that's more than just your strikers not doing their job, but it is also your strikers not doing your job. Like, we're not creative enough and we're not finishy enough.
It's a vicious cycle. We want to start from deep, but that means if we're further back, we're more open to letting away corners and set pieces for them to cross in and take advantage of our no height in the defence. We can't move forward, and we can't score goals. And it just gets stuck in this vicious cycle. We're in a swamp in the midfield with nowhere to go.
And I think that it speaks to Iain's point there about wing backs. I had that in my my running order to have a big moan about wing backs at some point, so might as well do it now. Calvin Miller on Saturday, that's a wing back.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that, just
like
that's a wing back. That's
Danny
what wing
Armstrong
backs
gets
do.
used as a wing back from time. Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing is, Danny Armstrong is not a defensive bone in his body, really. And don't go wrong, he's a good player and he's worked on that part of his game. But like, they say like attack is the best form of defence. Like, we never got behind Calvin Miller once on Saturday because we were really worried about what he was going to do to us. And that's a threat we just do not have at all. We don't have any wing-backs. So I can understand when you look at our centre-halves, I can understand why you go, right, I want to play a back three. Because we've effectively got 4 proven championship or above level centre-halves in Dick Murray, Hanlon and Fordyce, right? So you say, well, we've got 4 of them. I want to get 3 of them on the park because they're some of our best players. But we don't have any wing-backs. So what you end up doing is you go, right, we're just going to play full-backs and ask them to push on. But it's not the same. It's not, like, it doesn't work because it's a dedicated position in and of itself. Particularly in a team that's struggling to score goals. Because you can use slightly more conservative wing-backs if you've got goals and assists in your midfield and up front. Mm-hmm. But we don't. We are actually relying on that width. And you see that as really starkly on Saturday. Because we did not have a plan to get the ball to Pollock and Marsh. The plan was, they'll be able to press and win the ball for themselves. And that plan didn't work at all. Like, zero. That plan did not exist. And we didn't have a plan B because what you're having to do is basically... And I think we did it previously when Liam Dick was playing at full-back and starting to push on. And you could see, like, he's a defender, first and foremost. So he'll do it. He'll go beyond the halfway line. But he's not got that natural skill set to be able to do it without thinking. And you see it with Stevenson as well, where actually really evident at the Falkirk Stadium last week. He gets the ball in space on the wing, and his first touch, he closes his body off. So he's not sort of like showing himself down the line. He's taking that safe touch first. So he's like controlling the ball with his left foot on his instep so that it's not getting away from him. But it then means if he wants to go down the line, he has to then change his body shape again. And that's where, like, Calvin Miller was taking the ball in stride and running into space against us. And that's where this kind of falls down at the moment, I think, is, to your point, Carol, we can't get out because we don't have that ability to go out and actually carry the ball out the back line. And it's a really difficult one to resolve. I'm interested to see. We've not talked about him yet, actually. Welcome to the football club, George. George Gatau's come in.
No pressure, George.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
No, none.
It's just like
never
seen him.
Yeah.
No, I was in relatively on the whistle on Saturday. I've never seen him kick a ball, and I'm like, well, you better be a bloody wing back. Because if he's not, like, we're going to finish the season without them. And I think that's where I don't think it's too important, basically. like your wing backs, your full backs are not unimportant positions. I think they get kind of maligned as that a little bit, but that's where you can make all the difference, especially if you're playing narrow like we were on Saturday. And see, we got away with it at the Falkirk Stadium because the front three were winning the ball back for themselves and then creating chances. And even at that, our goals came from a corner kick and a penalty.
Thing is, in that formation, your two wing backs are your main outlet. Like they're defenders in name only almost. You know what I mean? It's your main attacking threat.
Yeah.
And you end up with like the worst of both worlds, where they're struggling to get forward because they're not comfortable at it. But then when they do get forward, if they get broken on quickly, they get caught out. And you've seen it a couple of times. Doherty's just miles out of position, and Ethan Ross and Calvin Miller are bearing down on like Ewan Murray, a terrifying prospect.
Because that's, I mean, we were slightly lopsided with it, Falkirk. Like, Keelan Adams wasn't as advanced as Miller was, because you can see, like, one of them is more naturally a defender and one of them is more naturally a winger. But he's got, I mean, Keelan Adams is really, really good this season. He's good because he got the skill set to do it. But, I mean, that was the thing. Doherty and Miller nominally were playing the same position and the same role. Like, they should have been cancelling each other out. They should have effectively just kept on running into one another on the halfway line. But how many times was Miller either sort of in a, to use the kind of language for it, in a duel with Doherty in our half, or, as you say, Iain, beyond Doherty in our half, versus how many times did Jordan Doherty touch the ball in Falkirk's half? And it's, again, it's not his fault. It's not, like, to go back to the point about judging Kev for not kicking the ball well enough. Like, that's not, he doesn't do that. That's it's the same thing. It's like criticising him for not being tall enough, for not being fast enough. Like, it's not part of his makeup. But we're halfway into the season now. We need to stop asking guys to do things they can't do.
Just like, it's almost like taking the shackles off and just saying, just look, as soon as you get that ball, just forget about the defensive side of it. Just go for it. Just go for it. Just see what happens. Doesn't matter if you lose it, because you're going to get someone else on the other side, Feedy, dropping back. So Lewis Stevenson goes forward, then Jordan Doherty should surely fall back, and then you become a back four. It's kind of like how Scotland had it with Steve Clarke when you had Robertson and Tierney playing on the same side. Tierney would play as your left centre back, and then you had Robertson bombing forward, or occasionally Tierney would break out and then Robertson would drop in. Just trust that someone else is going to get the defensive side of it, and you just need to be going forward and just causing problems. It's so easy to look at and sort of say, like, this is how you do it, but just frustrating when you're watching it as a fan. And I'm sure as professionals, they'll sort of say, yeah, but there's this and this. But yeah,
of course, and that's it. There's no, barrister for the defence. We're just slagging them off at free will at the moment. But
it's like you said, Robbie. I don't think they trust each other. I think they're hoping that someone's going to do something that they've never done before in their life, and it's going to be a good thing. And we need to just start trusting in what we're good at, rather than hoping that we're going to be good at something else. Like Kev with his kicking. He can't kick. Stop playing the ball to his feet.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it is just, how do you get the most people doing what they want to do most on the park at one time? Again, we spoke about this a lot last season when Brown was playing in the centre midfield, and it's like, the more you have to think about what you're doing, the harder it is to just play the game. I was going to say let's move on to something else, but no, I want to complain about the next thing as well. So on Sunday, Barry Robson, and I was full of praise for him last week, possibly sort of the most of anyone in terms of trying to give him credit for his tactical choices. First half, he absolutely out-tacticked John McGlynn and deserves loads of credit for that, and still does. That credit doesn't get taken away. But what happened on Sunday was that McGlynn made changes at half-time, kind of redressed the balance, and then Falkirk were better in the second half. Iain, were you surprised that there was no apparent change Maybe there was some kind of tweak that my eye didn't pick up. But were you surprised there was no changes from the Rovers at halftime yesterday on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the whole of this. I was watching the players as they're coming out the tunnel one by one, and I'm like, he's still there, he's still there, he's still there, he's still there. Yeah, it's the same team. I think we probably should have gone to a back four at half time and brought Connolly on and tried to get a bit of genuine width in the final third, and try give Marsh something to feed off. I think we hung him out to dry in particular, just for the whole of the second half, and we just tried to kind of go long to him, and he's surrounded by three centre halves who are twice his height. I think it was probably, dare I say it, a little bit naive from Robson to just try and kind of keep with the plan despite the plan not working. And I don't think there was any greater show of that than Finlay Pollock, who is there to harry the defenders and not a lot else, lasting, when did he come off? Was it 80 minutes?
85 minutes.
85 minutes. So a player who his role is almost redundant after like 15 minutes plays 95% of the game. Quite frustrating that we never just changed it up and tried to do something else. I think I've not really touched on it, but I think we had chances in that first half. Do you know what I mean? It's just a wee bit more frustrating that they are still coming from, as you say, the set pieces and stuff, and we're not really creating much. And based on that, I think we should have changed that.
Yeah, Robbie, would you agree with that?
Look, I've touched on this before earlier on in the season, but it's one of those things where like you never see us going out and having like a comfortable game where we win against a team like 3-0. And again, last Saturday was never going to be like that because Falkirk are where they are for a reason. That they're on merit and they are a very good side. But yeah, I think that look, the sort of first half you could see there was sort of like there was elements where we were like breaking out, but then just the second half, it just, particularly after that second goal, it just became a case of like it was so rushed trying to get the ball forward that like any time that we would get out, we would get the ball out to the other side, and then it'd just be a misplaced pass, or it'd be like something stupid like you're playing it like 5 yards in front of a player and it goes out for a throw. And it's just when you get to points like that, that's when it becomes like really, really frustrating. You can feel the crowd like just sinking in terms of like getting on players' backs and things like that. But yeah, I think that Robson really should have looked to potentially change it up. I would have been intrigued to sort of see maybe different personnel coming in. But yeah, he's obviously gone with the way that he's gone and thought it would be right. But yeah, I think that to call it potentially naive to a degree is probably fair, I would say. But again, there's always the next game, so we move on to next week or tomorrow night and see how we go.
I think it's either naive or it's hard-headed. I don't think there's a third interpretation. The team was set out with a very specific job in mind, and we know that because they did it last week and it worked. But when it hasn't worked for 45 minutes, I don't know. I didn't see any evidence for why it would have continued to, or why it would have started.
The
working.
Damage was done because the first goal had gone, and Falkirk knew that they were getting success off of playing it long. So, and again, fair play to John McGlynn because he deserves credit for adapting his approach and changing it up. But yeah, there was no point where you really thought like, we're on the verge, we're actually on the cusp of like getting forward. It was more just like, look, we'll see what we can do. And again, it comes down to that aspect of like, we tried to counteract Falkirk and did that very, very successfully when we played them in the Scottish Cup. But then with this game, it was like, okay, we've tried to counteract them, we failed, what else have we got up our sleeve? And you never really got a sort of feel for that, which, lends itself to the point that you were making after the Cup game as well about that. So, yeah, fair play.
I have a fair degree of sympathy on kind of two fronts for Barry Robson. So one is, I think I said it up top, nobody saw that coming from Falkirk, right? And I don't think that's just, a lot of the time there's stuff that happens that we never saw coming because obviously, but like I don't imagine the Falkirk fans expected that. It really was a big, proper roll of the dice from John McGlynn. And he, again, said already, deserves huge credit for that. So I don't think it's necessarily, first half. I've got quite a lot of sympathy for Barry Robson. It's by half time, even if you don't have a plan B already, because it was so far off your radar you never saw it coming, like plan A wasn't working. And it just felt a bit like you're kind of just hanging on and thinking like, well, Dylan hit the bar with one free kick, maybe we'll get another one. Whereas you might as well have, to my mind, might as well have gone, look, at least get Hammer on at half time. Pollock's just running a bit effectively. Like he's not, he's there to do one job, as we've said, and that job doesn't exist. So put on somebody who at least does a different job. I agree with you, Iain. I think a bigger change would have been what I would have done. But, even just something to try a little bit more. And then the other point, this is slightly more kind of nebulous, but it is relevant. Barry Robson, I imagine, is a little bit like, I've only been here 3 games. Like, he's still finding his feet, and there's quite a lot of negativity somehow. Don't know who that's coming from. But this is now the third time we've seen this. Because he's probably going, I've been here 3 games and we won one of them. We are 20 games into the league season. Well, cup games in there as well. Like, a lot of this stuff isn't new to us. And it's quite frustrating to see.
It wasn't one of those ones where we got completely rode over the top of, and I think that's a fair point as well. It wasn't a Ayr away or a Falkirk away in the league. It was very much like, that's partly why it's also so frustrating, because I don't think Falkirk, they deserve their praise for the win, but I don't think they really had to be exceptional to get there. Like, a very, very defendable first goal gets them into the lead, which puts us in a nightmare position. And then the second one is so much of our doing. So, look, they deserve credit for it. They took their chances when they came up, and that's all you can do in football. I mean, from their side, that's fair. But yeah, from our side, it's naturally also frustrating.
Yeah, I don't think.
Something quite telling in the second half, and please do feel free to use this to segue into the second goal. But Tom Lang, we know Lang quite well. Good defender, but has a nuke in him. And there was one point where I can't remember exactly what happened. He either got caught slightly out of position or the ball got caught under his feet and the ball broke to Hammer. Yeah. And you're thinking, brilliant, spin and hit it into the corner. And he hits it on target and one of his centre-halves bails him out. And then you're looking at that in the reverse situation. Murray makes the mistake and it's a goal. And it's just totally so respective of the two teams' fortunes over the course of the season in a microcosm.
Yeah, and I think that's... I don't think anybody's going to argue that was one of Falkirk's better performances of the season. They've had some really excellent performances. I think the thing that obviously they'll be so pleased about is that it almost looked like last weekend that someone had almost kind of highlighted the chink in their armour. This is a way that you can go at them. There's the blueprint. And they've turned up the next week and basically gone, nah, shove your blueprint. We can play this completely differently. And then that's it. But because there wasn't, to go back to the very beginning, there wasn't a million miles between the teams. There wasn't an awful lot in the game. But again, it did feel like, the chances that the Rovers got were kind of from set pieces in the first half. Gullen comes on. He actually comes on just after the second goal, I think, so we'll circle back to that in a second. But in the first 5 minutes that he's in the park, he gets 2 shots away, which you're like, oh, Ambassador, you're really spoiling us. 2 shots from one player. The first one, as you say, comes from that mistake, and then the second one's it's like a second ball, and it's unfortunate he's on his weaker foot, but still 2 shots on target. But the problem then is that then kind of disappeared as well, because actually for those 5 minutes, it's this looks like we've got a centre forward on the park, really for the first time. And then again, it just kind of faded away. And I think a lot of that, again, to be fair to Falkirk, was them just shutting the game down. And it's right, we're 2-0 up. We don't need to take any chances. We'll just slow this right down. However, they did get to being 2-0 up thanks to less than stellar defending, I think we can call it. Robbie, do you want to go first?
Cheers
Give your
for giving
thoughts
me
on
all
this?
the brutal points tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I mean, it's just such a simple goal. We like get the ball up the pitch, Cole Donaldson returns it back, it gets flicked on, and then from my perspective, now I believe, right, that based off the highlights, Kevs came forward and he shouted Muzz to try and claim it. Now, I don't know if everyone's of the same perspective of this, or it's been picked up in terms of the mics for Rafe TV, but I'm certain that he's came out, because there is no danger he's standing on the far right-hand side of the box for no reason, and, like, coming towards it. And then Iain Murray just completely ignores it, and he goes for a header, which lands... to be fair to McKeever, still got a lot of work to do from that angle. And then automatically Kev's sort of backpedaling. He turns towards the goal because it looks like McKeever's going to lob him. But McKeever gets it out his feet so quickly and does so well to get into a position where he can just shoot. And Kev turns around and realises this, that he's not getting lobbed. And the shot's already away. And then he's sort of like running past the ball and trying to dive towards it. So you can see what he's doing. For me, it's all on Iain Murray. I think that it's just the whole situation. And to be fair, I do feel like we should have potentially been taking Iain Murray off after that first half sort of injury, because he didn't look the same after. It looked like he'd been rocked by it. And again, it's pretty damning about Callum Fordyce that he's not been used in that position. Which again, it makes you ask the question. Like, we've got another centre half on on the bench, and yet we're just not turning to him. But yeah, it's just one of the most frustrating goals that you'll see us lose, just because it's so preventable. Like, if the ball goes anywhere else, and I don't know why he decides to header it at that point, but just all he needs to do is just let it run to Kev, and then we're fine. But instead he headers it, and it goes right back to McKeever. And again, I've no doubt that Iain Murray's watched that back, and you don't really need to over-analyse the goal, because it's such one where, again, it's as soon as you see what's happening, it's much like the Sam Stanton one last week. As soon as you see what's happened, if he could do it again straight away, he's making another decision. But here we are. And it killed off the game.
I think you're a little bit charitable on two counts there. I think you brushed over we put the ball up the park. Iain Murray plays a terrible pass and gives the ball away. And that's where it comes from. He's got the ball and he just plays this like half-arsed, tired, injured pass, and it doesn't go anywhere, and then the ball gets returned straight away. And then I think you're charitable with Kev. I think he should save it, man. I think he's close to the ball. I get what you're saying about, like, you know, he thinks he's going to get lobbed. See, when you look at how close to his body is when the ball goes past him, it's like at his foot. You know what I mean? Kick it, or
it's
get a hand on it.
The thing is, for me, it's momentum's carrying him away, and it's really
you're right. You're right.
He should never have been put in that position.
Perhaps looks worse. Yeah.
I think, for me, that's where I am with it as well. Is like he's so close to it, and I suppose it's one of these where I'm sort of, I can understand exactly why he's done what he's done, but I still think it was wrong. Like, because when you see the way the ball lands at McIver's feet, when that comes out to him, if you paused it and showed it to somebody and said, this goes in, how does he do it? 9 times out of 10 you go, he's going to lob the keeper. And that's exactly what's in Dabrowski's mind. You can see it. But he does this sort of Scooby-Doo run where he turns to run back to his goal. And that's when he turns back, and as you say, the ball goes by him, sort of, it's within his kind of space. But because he's having to twist back, he can't adjust his body to it. And it gets easy for me to say it, but I think if he backpedals, there's a slightly larger chance that he might get lobbed. There's not a chance he concedes that goal. It's actually very, very similar. Not very similar. It's relatively similar to the chance that Marsh had right at the beginning last week. And because I remember Alan saying, like, he's tried to wrong foot the goalkeeper by putting it near post. And that's what McKeever does. He hits it earlier to catch the goalkeeper out, and it works perfectly. I mentioned I'd seen a couple of people almost sort of taking the blame away from Dubrovsky for that. I think the bigger sin is on the part of Murray. I'm glad you said that about the initial ball, Iain, because I was thinking the same thing. It's a clearance from kind of on the byline. He only gets it about 40 yards. And it comes down. And actually, Dylan Tate kind of has to knock it back to Donaldson. But it's just, like, it's neither here nor there. Like, you're not... Both of them, both times that Murray has the ball in possession, if he just puts the ball out of play, and I understand that's not always the best thing to do, but at least there would be no danger. Both times. First with a bad pass. And then the thing with the header for me is, I don't know what he thinks he's doing with it. Like, I don't know what the plan is, because there's not a Rovers player there for him to be headering it to. And if he's just trying to get his head on it, why are you putting it inside the park? You got to just exactly, and that's without mentioning the fact that actually he can just leave it. If he gets a shout and he knows it, he should be able to just leave it. It's a real. It's kind of error on top of error, on top of error, on top of error.
Everybody's out of position. I mean, Kev, if he'd looked over his other shoulder instead of that, he would have probably got back quick enough. But I think he's not where he thinks he is. And Ewan Murray's not where he thinks he is. I don't think. They're out of... In their heads, they're out of position. And when they look and get back to reality, they're not where they think they are. And I think that's why Dubrovsky can't run back. Is he thinks he's further over than he is. I've got it on still in front of me at the moment, and it's just, they are just, what is he thinking?
It's not a goal that's improved by slow motion either, I'll tell you that much.
No.
Right, I'm fed up talking about this. We've talked about it for a really long time. There's just one last thing I want to mention on this game. But before I do, anybody else want to say anything else on this? Nah, we're good. Right, sound. Only other thing I wanted to say was Paul Smith popping up at the end. I didn't have any idea, no idea that he was there. Like, if that was in any other circumstance other than the Rovers getting beat, it was still really nice to see that he's, not only back home and up and on his feet, he was actually at the game. And given a bit of time, I think I could probably find the kind of position of being quite charitable towards that. The fact that, literally less than a week after having a heart attack, he got to be in front of an away end celebrating a win.
Really big.
If it was anybody else, I'd have been calling that the story of the week. But it wasn't. It was against us, so I'm still crabbing about it. Let's put that to bed, have a quick break, and we'll come back and relatively briefly look ahead to Tuesday night. Blair.
Yes, mate.
You're a man.
Yes.
And you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know. Probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff. And they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
Right, we'll look ahead now to tomorrow night as we record, Tuesday night, a trip to Hamilton. So let's flip things about a bit again and start where we normally finish. We'll do lineups because I think there could be a fair bit of variety here. I think there's a few different angles you could go and a few different kind of personnel questions, different directions you could take them. So, Robbie, I feel like I'm starting with you on everything tonight, so let's not change the habit. Who do you want to see coming in and how do you want to see the team laid
I think
out?
that for Robson, we'll probably stick with 3 at the back. So I would remain with Kevin goals, which probably isn't a surprise to any sort of regular listener, given our Kev stan here. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of people that feel that we should change Andy McNeil, but I'm not one of them. For wing backs, I would keep Stevenson in, but I would actually go with Katau as the right wing back. I really would be keen to see what he can bring to the table. By all accounts, looking at the responses from sort of Teesside based journalists, they were very enthusiastic about how he looked. Again, it's a difficult one to gauge because under 23s down south seems to have such a wild variation. You either get a Conor O'Riordan or you get a Timmy Abraham. So it can be real variety as to what you actually get. And then for the back line, that would mean that Doherty would come in to be a centre back along with Hanlon and Dick. I feel like you drop you and Murray out, and I just can't see Fordyce starting. Brown and Matthews at the base of midfield with Easton further ahead, and Gullen and Marsh to be starting off as the centre forwards. I would want Gullen to be sort of the out and out threat up there, and Marsh to be buzzing about as he can. And yeah, with Dylan Easton sort of getting cover from Brown and Matthews, I would hope that would offer at least a bit of creativity. But yeah, just go for the jugular. I think with Hamilton, they brought in Ricky Lamy recently. They seem to be just a very, very weird club, aren't they? We've only played them once this season. They've got a very poor away record, but at home they seem to sort of do okay. They've not performed great recently, but yeah, just really a game that we need to be going in and going for the jugular, I feel like. But it's so hard to predict how we'll do because they're not one of the top teams in the league. So how Barry Robson set this one up is a mystery for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it's a very different ask from Ayr away, Falkirk at home. Hamilton is a different dynamic. As you say, a funny side Hamilton, so they've conceded 8 or 9 goals more than we have this season, which when you think how much we've just complained about the defence, but they've also scored 8 or 9 goals more than us. It's 8 one way and 9 the other, I can't remember which. So you don't really know what that kind of leads you to. It's kind of stoppable object meets movable force.
I feel like for their really sort of problems, they'll probably be quite easy to say, like, look, we're scoring plenty of goals. We just need to shore it up at the back, which is why they've brought in Ricky Lamy. Like, theirs feels like a lot easier fix, whereas when you're not scoring goals, then you've got both the conundrum of, look, do we need an extra centre forward, or what do we need? Do we need a creative midfielder in? Which, again, very hard questions to ask, whereas a centre-half, meat and potatoes, Ricky Lamy, who's obviously experienced at this level and gone on and been a decent player, I think it's a lot easier question for them to resolve than for us.
Yeah. I know you're saying about Ricky Lamy there. Hamilton fans not complimentary about him in his performance. No, yeah, cart horse. I think I read it a couple of times in a few different places.
I'll take some more of that, please.
Absolutely.
Just one other quick point on your starting 11 there, Robbie. You had Jordan Doherty, right hand side of the back 3. Neil Collins said that's where he liked him best. Is that right?
I don't know. I can't really remember too much about Neil Collins' what he said, other than that this is our team, which it wasn't. Neil, you left for America. What you doing?
I think he said that at some point, which would be interesting to see, because actually, I've been pretty impressed with Jordan Doherty, but he doesn't necessarily, physically look like a centre half. And not that it's only about being a big Easter Island statue, but I would be intrigued to see kind of how he gets on there, but equally intrigued to see how he gets on at kind of centre midfield as well. It looks like a very kind of technically accomplished guy who could, it makes sense he can play a few different places, so it'd be interesting to see where else he pops up. Carol, how have you got things laid out, please?
Well, we're on version 7 at the moment.
_draft_ do not edit _final.
Because I really want to get Connolly on, because I think he's got the speed that we need to make it poetic. But where do you put him on? And then do you change the formation? Do you go 3-4-2-1 and you put Gullen up front on his own with Connolly and Easton sitting behind. Yeah. I genuinely, it's so complicated. Do you stick with the same formation? Do you really mix it up?
I think we had very similar thought patterns, and I'll tell you how I've managed to kind of bring all that together. 4-4-2 is how I've basically managed to try and, because it was basically, that was how I started, with kind of several kind of problem statements, and then I was like, right, how can I make this work? Which is, number one, don't have wing backs, as far as I'm concerned.
If we don't have them, we can't play them.
Exactly.
So,
now, maybe to Robbie's point, maybe George Gateau can do that, and if he can, brilliant. But I'm working on the basis that he can't effectively. So that almost by default leads me to a back four, and I think based on the weekend, it's relatively easy to pick who drops out of that. So Ewan Murray's out there. So I've kept the rest. So Doherty, Hanlon, Dick, Stevenson is my back four.
Yeah.
Going beyond that, I wanted Connolly to come back in. I'm afraid I wanted Pollock to drop out because I think he's a very specific job that he did very well last week, which is pressing their back line. I don't think particularly exists a lot of the time. And I don't think he's got enough other kind of additional skill sets to kind of bring to the table to warrant keeping him in the side over a few others. So I wanted to bring Connolly in, I wanted to bring Gullen in, and with Sam Stanton gone, I don't think we've particularly got a really natural number 10 either. Easton's been doing it, and Easton, he does it well, but he's better on the wing. So to go back to a previous point about trying to get as many guys doing what they most naturally do, Connolly's a winger, Easton's a winger, Gullen's a striker, Marsh is a striker, Brown and Matthews are central midfielders. That's a 4-4-2 for me. A little bit basic, but it ticks a lot of boxes in just terms of kind of back to basics, people doing what they should do.
That was my version 3.
So. Iain, where did you land?
Yeah, so I've gone with the same formation as Saturday, but with quite a big asterisk next to George Gateau, who's going to be brilliant and provide us the width that we so sorely require. I've gone Kevin goals, obviously. Gateau, I've kept Murray in the team on the proviso that he can't be as bad as he was on Saturday. And not a lot.
Is that like a condition or just a threat? Like,
yeah,
you're in the team, you cannot be as bad as you were.
You have this season. We thought Ayr was bad, and then we had that Falkirk game. I mean, do not give these people a lower bar.
Listen, that's the condition. That's it. I've gone, so Murray, Hanlon and Dick at the back and Stevenson at left back. I will reiterate, the width must come from Gateau. It must, because we didn't have another option. I've actually moved Doherty into the base of the midfield, just purely from watching him and what I think his best attributes are. I think that's a position which he naturally will fit into, in the kind of engine room, to use a cliche. I think he might be a decent player there. When we were talking about him playing at right centre half, I just can't see how putting, like, with a team that struggles to defend cross balls, I can't see how putting a 5'9" centre half in there is going to fix those problems. That might be too kind of straight back right down the line, but in my head that doesn't seem to make much sense. So I've gone Doherty in the middle, as I said, Brown and Easton, and then I've gone a front two of Marsh and Gullen. Quite like to see Marsh up front with another striker. I thought he was good on Sunday, alongside Pollock, but I think Gullen offers a different type of assistance, and I'm keen to see those two up front together. Gullen, as you've mentioned, actually got a couple of shots away, so if we can maintain that, who knows, one might go in the net.
We should just be able to get some shots. That would be nice.
It's a low bar.
Yeah, it really is. Again, I will reiterate, our average shots away from home in the league, I think, was at 1.84. It was less than 2 anyway. So if we can lift that average a little bit,
just have a dig from kickoff. Nice. Just go for it. Just charge. I'm not even
Just
talking about a charge. I'm just
Leroy
talking about a
Jenkins
punch from the halfway
into
line.
there.
Podcast regressed.
I think that'll do us, to be honest. That wasn't really too much of a preview, but I think we may have run out of legs just going over Saturday again. But it should be a more normal example of what we can expect from Barry Robson. I think is probably the thing I'm most looking forward to. Maybe not even looking forward to, maybe that's not the right word, I don't know. But like that, the Ayr game we've said, I think came too quickly. I don't think that was a fair judge of what he's kind of bringing to the table. First Falkirk game, I was really impressed, but it was a hit job. Effectively, it was a very specific plan to be executed against Falkirk, and then the second Falkirk game was being the victims of a hit job. That was a very specific game plan that they turned up with to turn us over, and did. All credit to them. This feels like the first quote-unquote run-of-the-mill game that he's got. You know, it's another team in that sort of blob that we're in at the moment of you have a very outside chance of finishing fourth, you have a slightly less outside chance of finishing ninth, and probably an 80% chance that you will finish somewhere in between. So there will be a lot to take in terms of the approach and who does get the nod and how we set up. So intriguing as much as anything, but certainly a big week for us. So obviously the derby to come after that. And we will obviously be cropping up throughout to talk about it all as well. Just what everybody needs. Thank you, everyone who is listening. Thanks for joining us this evening as we record, although I imagine most of you listen to this tomorrow. Safe travels if you are heading to Hamilton to see this game. We will be back, as I say, almost certainly on Thursday to talk about whatever happened at New Douglas Park and to look forward to the derby as well. And we will see you then. Thank you and goodbye.